Tonight on Steelers Talk, a top NFL insider from ESPN reveals the Pittsburgh Steelers' plans for the NFL trade deadline this year. And then we get into a report that claims that the Pittsburgh Steelers want Aaron Rodgers to return for another season in 2026. I'll be breaking down everything that you guys need to know about the Pittsburgh Steelers on today's show. And if Omar Khan makes a trade before the deadline here, guys, we're less than 2 weeks away from the NFL trade deadline. We will be going live on this channel when and if that happens, whether it's for a wide receiver, a different position, whatever the case may be. We're going to have a video for you guys, and of course, we'll be going live when that breaking news happens. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already for the latest Steelers trade news and rumors. We're going to let you guys know all the reporting surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers, who they're interested in, who they're calling about, all these different things heading into the trade deadline in just a couple of weeks. So now let's start here with Jeremy Fowler from ESPN. And he had a very extensive article today on the Pittsburgh Steelers and what he's hearing from his sources in the Steelers building. And now Fowler, something you guys need to know about him is that he has a lot of connections inside the Steelers building. He's somebody that, honestly has a lot more inside knowledge than even ESPN's dedicated Steelers reporter, Brooke Pryor, does. And Fowler has some really good stuff. He had some really great insights during the Rodgers saga, and he kind of detailed everything that he's hearing inside of the Steelers building at this point. This is what Jeremy had to say about specifically the Steelers' offense to this point. When talking to people with the Steelers this week in advance of Thursday night's matchup with Cincinnati, a few themes emerged. First, Pittsburgh's offense believes it's a run-first attack now. The Steelers believe their interior offensive line in particular has emerged in recent games to provide an additional push up the middle that benefits backs Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell. This helps protect a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers and plays to offensive coordinator Arthur Smith's strengths as a run game guru with a tight end background. Expect that identity to continue. Now, certainly the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think, have found their identity on offense. And early in the season, they were still kind of trying to figure out exactly what works with this kind of personnel that the Steelers have. They wanted, going into the season, to play a lot of 12 and 13 personnel, but in the early portion of the season, they were playing a lot of Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth, asking them to block, and it just wasn't really working out. So they started putting Spencer Anderson out there as a jumbo tight end with Darnell Washington out there as another tight end, and ever since they made that switch, the Steelers' offense has been one of the best in the National Football League. Before they made that switch, which was in Week 4 for the Dublin game versus the Minnesota Vikings, Steelers' offense was below average, all right? It wasn't terrible, especially against the Jets game, which really carries a lot of this number here. They were 17th in EPA per play and 21st in success rate. But then after they made that switch over the last several games, they are now a top 10, arguably top 5 offense in the National Football League, which is really taken on by these jumbo personnel looks, creating rushing lanes for Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell, and then Aaron Rodgers playing more aggressively over the last few weeks because teams are starting to play more one high safety coverages. Because plain simply, guys, if you're playing a 2 deep safety coverage versus that jumbo personnel look, especially out of nickel personnel, this Steelers team is going to be able to run the football on you all day long. So I definitely think that this is sustainable, guys, and I do think that the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, at least, knock on wood, is going to be able to sustain this as long as guys like Darnell Washington, Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, and Jaylen Warren, if those really key guys can stay healthy on this Steelers offense, I think that this offense absolutely is sustainable and is going to be a top 10 unit as the season goes on here in Pittsburgh. And then also here, Jeremy Fowler revealed Pittsburgh's trade deadline approach that they're going to be taking over the next 2 weeks, and it might surprise some Steelers fans here. This is what Fowler is hearing from Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh doesn't want to jeopardize what it has going at the cost of making a splashy receiver trade. The combination of DK Metcalf, a great trio at tight end with Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, and Darnell Washington, and a steady running game is working right now. Las Vegas's Jakobi Meyers is an ideal fit because he's adaptable. He can be a reliable number 2 or a high-volume target if needed. But the Raiders are one of the teams giving mixed signals on whether they would actually execute a deal, which complicates the market. Also, they aren't the only ones who are interested. Now, my read on what Fowler says about Pittsburgh's trade deadline kind of approach here tells me that the Steelers are going to be willing to trade for a guy like Jakobi Meyers, but kind of in classic Omar Khan fashion, they're not going to overpay for one, all right? They're going to have their price that they're willing to pay for certain types of receivers that they are going to be willing to go get. And honestly, I can't really see them giving up more than a fourth-round pick on any wide receiver, all right? They are being very precious with their higher draft picks. They're, of course, day one draft pick next year, and then their 3 day 2 draft picks that they have right now. I don't see them trading any of those picks at this point, guys. Even to get a guy like maybe Chris Olave, who might net a third-round pick, I don't think the Steelers are going to be willing to do that. I think that they'd probably prefer to give up like a 5th or a 6th-round pick, but at the very most, if they absolutely have to and they love the guy that they're getting, maybe at most they give up a 4th-round pick. But if you're expecting the Steelers to pony up a high draft pick for a receiver like they did for DK Metcalf this offseason, I would say, maybe temper your expectations here. I think Omar Khan wants to get a good deal without having to break the bank. If you guys want to check out our list of realistic Steelers wide receiver targets, we put it out earlier today on this channel. I'll put the link to that one in the top right of today's show, as well as in the comments and description of today's program. But coming up here on Steelers Talk, there's a report that Aaron Rodgers could be coming back to the Pittsburgh Steelers, or at least the Steelers are hoping he comes back to the Pittsburgh Steelers after a fast start to the 2025 campaign. But before we get into the rest of today's edition of Steelers News and Rumors, let's have a word from our sponsor today at Omaha Steaks. Omaha Steaks is the official sponsor of tailgating this football season. From legendary burgers to mouth-watering steaks, deli-style franks, and so much more, you'll elevate your next game day get-together with America's original butcher. And now, with this exclusive offer, you can get $35 off at omahasteaks.com with promo code STEELERS at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. Omaha Steaks has been America's original butcher since 1917. Every steak is perfectly aged to maximize tenderness and hand-cut by master butchers in America's heartland. Grass-fed, grain-finished beef has more marbling for exceptional flavor and is the choice of steakhouses and professional chefs around the world. Omaha Steaks offers unrivaled quality and variety, and every bite is backed by their 100% guarantee. They also carry mouth-watering burgers, chicken, pork, seafood, and more, including delectable desserts. So whatever you guys want from America's favorite butcher, they've got it on their website. And guys, the thing that I love about Omaha Steaks is that you can get a bunch of different packages with a bunch of different cuts of meat. It's not just steak with Omaha Steaks. If you want to get a bunch of burgers for a cookout or hot dogs or chicken or chicken wings, there's a lot of different options that you have from our friends at Omaha Steaks. But every cut of meat that you get from these guys is premium quality, and you get it at an absolutely terrific price. And you guys can get $35 off their already terrific prices when you use our code STEELERS at checkout. Make game day delicious with the official sponsor of tailgating with our friends at Omaha Steaks this football season. Visit omahasteaks.com and get $35 off with promo code STEELERS at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com and promo code STEELERS at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. And a big thank you to Omaha Steaks for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. Now, Jeremy Fowler's not done here, and he says that Pittsburgh would absolutely love for Aaron Rodgers to return to the team next season in 2026. Now, Rodgers said on the Pat McAfee show before the season that this is probably going to be his final season, but ever since then, even going back to training camp, he has been laying it on pretty thick that he is thinking about coming back for the 2026 season and playing a second campaign here in the Steel City. This is what Jeremy Fowler had to say about the Steelers' feelings about QB1. The Steelers will scour the draft market for the QB of the future for sure. They already are doing so. But if you ask people with the team whether they'd entertain the notion of Rodgers in the black and gold in 2026, the answer would be a resounding yes. He has maintained his elite ability to throw the football. And a big reason why I think the people in the Steelers locker room and in that building would want Rodgers to return is because of Art and Aaron's relationship. These guys have done a fantastic job, collaborating with what Rodgers does well, but also doing a lot of the run game stuff that Arthur Smith has been known for throughout his coaching career. The meshing of concepts in the red zone have worked really well for the Steelers offense as well. And this is what Jeremy Fowler had to say specifically about the dynamic between Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers offensive play caller. It's also noteworthy how Rodgers and Smith have hit it off. As right tackle Troy Fautano told me recently, Rodgers and Smith are both quick-witted and sarcastic, kindred souls in that way, razzing each other like old friends during team meetings. They are always messing around with each other, Fautano said. It's a healthy dynamic. Rodgers and Smith also respect each other's football acumen. It's a match that has worked well. And not only, is the dynamic between the quarterback and the offensive play caller really good, but the dynamic between the quarterback and the rest of the players has been working out really well as well, where Rodgers is pretty much literally a coach on the field for the Pittsburgh Steelers. According to DK Metcalf, he had his media availability today after practice on the south side of Pittsburgh, said this about Aaron Rodgers' leadership in the locker room. We have a player-led meeting on Thursdays where he's the head of the meeting. He does a lot of coaching up there. He sees what he sees that we can do better, and everybody just listens to him and takes notes. So obviously Aaron Rodgers has the respect and the command of the Steelers locker room. He is the leader in this locker room, and I think his leadership style of accountability, and he's not afraid to tell people when they're doing stuff wrong, as opposed to Russell Wilson where it's, you're good, King, you're good, it's all good, it's all good. It's like, no, we're losing 5 straight games in a row, Russ. It's not good, all right? And Aaron Rodgers is not afraid to be able to cultivate relationships with these guys. It's not like he's a tyrant out there. He's friends with all these guys, but he's earned the respect of everybody in that locker room to the point where, they can joke around and he can be very friendly with them, but he can also be that coach that says, hey, you're doing this wrong. You need to do better in this regard and not make this crucial mistake. And we've seen Rodgers be willing to hold these guys accountable throughout the season. I think that's part of the reason why this year's Steelers offense feels a lot different than it did last year with Russell Wilson at the helm. And frankly, everybody in this offense is getting smarter with Aaron Rodgers kind of telling them what he sees and what he thinks that they can be doing better, and just trying to remain and get and kind of maintain that status of being on the same page on the offensive side of the ball. However, with all that positivity set aside, okay, let's pump the brakes on the 2026 talks, at least right now, okay? Because if you'll remember, Russell Wilson had a very good first 6 games as a Pittsburgh Steeler. I mean, at that point, the Pittsburgh Steelers were 5-1. They were playing very well. People were talking about this team as a legitimate Super Bowl contender. And Russell Wilson was one of the more effective quarterbacks in the league through his first 6 starts in black and gold. And you compare his numbers to Aaron Rodgers's, and you can make an argument he played even better than Rodgers in his first 6 games. So the possibility of Rodgers falling off a cliff or whatever is certainly there. But as I discussed earlier, this year's offense feels different because they can actually run the football. And I think that Aaron Rodgers is just a better mental processor than Russell Wilson is. Russ was so dependent on his first read being open last year, where Rodgers, as we've seen over the last few weeks, he can get to that second and third read, and he can extend the play better than Russell Wilson could last year with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I think Rodgers, as the season goes on, it's going to be proven that he was the better option for the Steelers offense than Russell Wilson was. And, there is still a long way to go, and I'm not going to get ahead of myself and say the Steelers should definitely bring back Aaron Rodgers next year because, there's still a long way to go and a lot of stuff can still happen. But if Rodgers keeps it up and he keeps playing the way that he's playing, this offense keeps playing top 10 ball the rest of the way of the season here, I'm gladly going to welcome him back if he wants to be the Pittsburgh Steelers starting quarterback in 2026. And, I think the chances of Aaron Rodgers returning are actually pretty good, guys. When you think about it, what's the most likely scenario for the Steelers this year? I would say double-digit wins, a playoff berth, and probably not winning the Super Bowl. I'd say that's the most likely scenario for the Steelers this year, and I think that perfectly creates an environment for Rodgers to return. All right, there's still a win-now team with a lot of veterans on there, and I think at that point, Rodgers may come back for another season, not even necessarily for him, and to win another Super Bowl for him, but to come back and try to win a Super Bowl for Cam Hayward, who would be in his final season of his career next season. TJ Watt, an all-time great of this organization that has not won a Super Bowl. In fact, he hasn't even won a playoff game with this team. All right, there's a lot of veterans that have been with this team for a long time that haven't won a Super Bowl, and my guess is, if they don't win it this year, and as long as the team is just not terrible and they miss the playoffs or something like that, and Rodgers is playing well, he's having fun, all that different stuff by the end of the season, I think he's going to want to come back and try and get Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, and these other veterans a Super Bowl ring before they retire. So certainly think it's a possibility Rodgers returns to this team next year. And honestly, I think it's an ideal setup for the Pittsburgh Steelers to set up their next quarterback of the future, whether that's Will Howard or whether that's a quarterback that they draft in next year's NFL draft. if Rodgers returns, that gives that young quarterback an opportunity to sit behind an NFL legend, not have that pressure to play right away and adjust to the speed of the NFL game, the complexity of the NFL game in their rookie season. They can sit back, take notes, learn from one of the all-time greats, and then in year 2, assuming Rodgers retires after the second year here in Pittsburgh, that rookie can then take the reins and it's his team moving forward. I think that's the perfect setup. And honestly, Rodgers, especially if you listen to Will Howard, has been a perfect mentor to him. If you listen to Jordan Love, who are playing this weekend, Rodgers was a great mentor to him. So I think Rodgers has been really good to these young quarterbacks that he has mentored throughout his career. And if he comes back for another season, I can't think of a better setup for a young QB to get their career started. Speaking of Will Howard, he returned to practice today, and they opened his 21-day practice window after coming back from a broken pinky that has kept him out for quite a while, but he returned to practice today, which is great to see. And then also Calvin Austin III returned to practice today. He's been dealing with a shoulder injury. Looks like he's on track to play versus the Green Bay Packers. And of course, you might notice that everyone's wearing that yellow helmet this week, and of course we have the alternates for the Green Bay Packer game on Sunday Night Football. Now, some people were kind of talking about, are the Packers going to wear their yellow helmets too? Because that could be confusing if both teams are wearing their yellow helmets, all that different stuff. Well, we learned today that the Green Bay Packers will be wearing their all-white uniforms and helmets on Sunday, and honestly, that's a godsend, guys, because that would have just been too much yellow. All right, their normal away pants too are yellow. So, to have the yellow helmets, the yellow pants, and then the Steelers are wearing yellow helmets and yellow jerseys, that just would have been a lot of yellow, guys. So I'm really appreciative to the Green Bay Packers for choosing that color combination for their uniforms. But just some real talk here to finish up today's show, guys. I thought last year's throwbacks with the gray face mask and the block letters was way better than the ones that we got this year, like the rugby-looking jerseys. I know some people like them, but honestly, I'm not even a big fan of the yellow helmets, and that might be a hot take, but I don't think matte yellow looks all that good. But with the classic kind of gray face mask with the block letters, I think that's a classic old-school Pittsburgh Steelers look. I absolutely loved it when they played the New York Jets last year. I thought it looked amazing. And, I'm just disappointed that we're not going to see that iteration of the Steelers throwbacks this year. And honestly, guys, I think, and this is my opinion, I think they should be the full-time uniforms, all right? Can you imagine the away uniforms with this style as well? I think that this should be the full-time look for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is an old-school organization. The gray face mask, it just screams tough football to me. So let me know down there in the comments section to finish up today's show. Should these uniforms be Pittsburgh's full-time uniform design? The block numbers and the gray face mask, I think that this just screams Pittsburgh Steeler football. But let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. And that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers News and Rumors. Thank you guys so much for talking some Steelers ball with us this evening. We'll be back tomorrow with more Steelers coverage for you guys for free here on YouTube. So make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.